Beneath the golden hush of a Grecian morning, laurel leaves stir without sound. Their edges shimmer faintly, kissed by the warmth of a sun not yet risen above the hills. The air holds the softness of prelude, not silence, but the breath before. A song, somewhere deep within the sacred groves, something ancient rests. Not a creature, not a god, but a presence, like warmth, folded inside a memory. Here, the world leans inward. Trees bend, not from weight, but from understanding. The soil is gentle, fed by centuries of footfalls and tears, yet untouched by conflict. It remembers each visitor with stillness, never judgment. Upon one branch, a bird sleeps with wings tucked against its sides, as if guarding a secret knot, meant to be told, only felt. Among these trees, Heracles once walked, not in triumph, nor in sorrow, but as one between states of being. He had not yet forgotten, nor remembered. There was no burden on his back, only a quiet flicker in the center of his chest. Not flame, not pain, merely a warmth undefined, waiting. The grove knew his name. Not the one sung by poets or inscribed upon shields, but the name whispered by earth and stream, the name known only to stillness. It called to him not in words, but in sensation. The hush of moss, the patience of stone, the soft regard of the sky. As he passed through a clearing, a breeze carried the scent of laurel and old incense. It moved around him without touching, circling like memory-made air. He paused, though he had not chosen to. He turned, though nothing called his attention. And then he sat, folding himself among roots, as if drawn by a rhythm older than choice. Time passed without measure. The grove did not ask him to remember, it merely let him rest. The flicker in his chest did not grow, nor fade, but deepened, like a coal waiting for breath. And the grove, wise in its silence, knew that breath would come, not from winds or whispers, but from within. Above him, clouds drifted like linen stretched across the blue. The sun remained veiled, casting no shadow, offering no direction. It was not a place for movement, not yet. This was the beginning that does not begin. The first note that hums. Long before sound arrives, beneath his fingers the earth was warm, not heated by sun, but by presence, as though the world itself had chosen to be kind. And in that kindness, something inside Heracles stilled. The past did not vanish, the future did not press forward. Only now existed, held in the pause between breath and name. From the trees, a single leaf fell. It did not spiral, did not flutter. It simply dropped, like a final thought set gently upon a quiet mind. It landed beside him, untouched, complete. In the branches above, laurel leaves shimmered once more, their edges brushed by invisible light. The grove breathed without sound, and the flicker in Heracles' chest remained soft, steady, and waiting. And so the morning held him, like a hand cupped around a spark. The grove faded behind him like the last lines of a dream not meant to be remembered. Heracles moved without direction, his feet brushing soft earth, his gaze resting nowhere in particular. His eyes, once bright with purpose, now drifted, pale as shallow pools beneath the moon. Not empty, but unstirred. There was no urgency in his steps, no weight to his shoulders, only the hush of something forgotten, still lingering, in the folds of his breath. Villagers saw him pass, but said nothing. They did not speak his name aloud, though they knew it well. Not because of fear or reverence, but because he moved like a figure in mist, not to be disturbed, not to be anchored by the sound of his name. Children watched with wide eyes as he walked through dust and olive groves. He did not meet their gaze, but neither did he avoid it. He simply passed, as a breeze might pass through a field, present, quiet, and unclaimed. Within him, something remained unshaped, a space not of pain, but of distance. A veil had drawn itself over his memories, not to erase them, but to cradle them gently away from reach. The grove had offered rest. Now the path offered rhythm. Each step was the beat of a drum only he could hear. Slow, soft, inevitable. He reached a low stone wall, draped in wild thyme and warm ivy. Beyond it, a cottage nestled beneath a canopy of fig trees, their branches low with fruit not yet ripe. A faint song drifted through the open window. No words, only hums. The kind passed down by women who sing while mending, while remembering, while waiting. The tune wove itself through the air like steam from fresh bread. Heracles stood at the threshold. He did not knock. The door was open. Inside, the light was dim, filtered through gauze and leaves. A woman sat near the hearth, turning herbs in her lap. She did not look up. "You are home," she said, not as greeting, but as recognition. Heracles blinked slowly. He did not answer, not yet. The woman's eyes were soft as river stones, her voice carrying the weightless cadence of someone who had spoken to silence long enough to know its answers. She did not ask where he had been. She did not tell him what had happened. Instead, she reached for a clay cup and poured water. "Drink," she murmured. "Let it return when it chooses." He took the cup. His hand did not tremble. The water was cool, touched with rosemary and something else, something round and sweet like memory softened by time. He drank slowly, as if teaching his mouth the shape of calm. The woman watched the hearth, where embers glowed in hues of amber and hushed gold. A single flame flickered in the corner, held in a shallow oil lamp, carved with quiet care. The flame danced, not wildly, but in slow curves, like a reed swaying in sleep. From somewhere deep inside, a thought brushed against Heracles' mind, not a memory, but the echo of a feeling. Something once burned, now soothed. Something once torn, now resting. He could not name it. He did not try. Outside, the wind picked up gently, lifting the fig leaves with a sound like whispered laughter. The door creaked a little, not in protest, but as if opening further to welcome the moment. He stayed until the light shifted and shadows lengthened into blue. The song had ended, replaced by the soft clinking of herbs drying in the corner. He rose, bowed slightly, and turned back to the path. The woman said nothing, but as he stepped beyond the threshold, he felt warmth at his back, not from the hearth, but from memory slowly returning like the tide. The flicker within him remained, still gentle, still present, still unnamed. And so he walked again, guided not by knowledge, but by a quiet invitation to remember. Evening drifted down like woven gauze, turning the hills into soft silhouettes and the path into a ribbon of pale dust. Heracles walked as if carried, each step a continuation of the breath before it. The world had slowed to a hush, as though, holding its inhale, he did not seek direction. The road did not guide. They simply moved together, one folding into the other, in a rhythm older than decision. Ahead, beneath the wide arms of a cypress tree, a small cottage rested, its walls tucked beneath a blanket of ivy that swayed gently in the dusk. The windows glowed with warm lamplight, not bright, but golden, like the center of a candle just before sleep extinguishes it. The door stood slightly ajar, as if it had been waiting, not for someone in particular, but for the presence of evening itself. Heracles did not pause at the threshold. He stepped into the hush with the softness of someone who has nothing to carry but stillness. The floor creaked beneath his feet, not from weight, but from time, from memories that had settled deep into the wood. The walls were lined with shelves that held small clay bowls, folded linens, and bundles of dried lavender tied with faded twine. In the far corner sat an old man with skin like weathered bark and eyes that flickered like the ends of sleepy coals. He sat by the hearth with a spindle resting in his lap, though he no longer spun. He did not look up as Heracles entered, but the silence between them shifted, like a welcome without words. The hearth held no roaring flame, only a few coals nestled in ash, glowing with quiet purpose. Above them hung a kettle, its surface mottled with time, breathing out soft curls of steam. The scent in the air was that of rosemary, cedar, and something round and honeyed like warmth remembered from a childhood nap. Heracles lowered himself to a woven mat and let the hush settle over him. He did not speak. He did not ask. The old man's presence filled the room not with knowledge, but with a kind of spaciousness, the kind that leaves room for unspoken things to stretch out and rest. "You're looking for something," the old man said, but his voice held no question. Heracles' gaze remained low. His hands rested on his knees, calm and open. "Not to find," the old man added, "but to feel again." Outside, the wind brushed against the shutters like a lullaby, unsure of its melody. Inside, time loosened its grip. The room felt neither old nor new, but part of a moment unmeasured by hours or days. In that space, the flicker in Heracles' chest stirred, not with urgency, but with recognition, like a soft light catching the edge of a mirror long covered. The old man rose, slowly and without sound, and retrieved a shallow dish. He poured oil into it, golden, thick, touched with light, and placed a small wick at its center. When he lit it, the flame rose, not with flare, but with reverence. It did not dance, it did not shift, it held still, as if listening. Heracles watched the flame. Within it, he saw not fire, but reflection, not heat, but memory. His breath deepened without his knowing, and for a long time, the room was filled with only the quiet language of light. "You will go," the old man said. "Eventually, but not yet. The path will wait for you." Heracles looked toward the flame once more. The flicker within him pulsed gently, not larger, not louder, just present, like something heard through a wall, not clear, but known. He slept on a mat beside the hearth that night. No dreams visited, only warmth. The flame burned low, but steady, casting soft shapes that drifted across the ceiling and returned to their beginning again and again. When morning came, he rose before the sun. The old man was already seated, spindle in hand once more. They exchanged no words, only a nod, and the door opened. The ivy moved aside to let him pass, and as he stepped into the pale dawn, the flame within him breathed once more, not brighter, only steadier. The sky had not yet chosen its color when Heracles began to walk again. Pale silver hung above the trees, neither night nor morning, a soft in-between where the world exhaled without thought. Beneath his feet, the path whispered, olive dust rising in gentle sighs with each step, as if remembering others who had passed this way, long before his name belonged to stories. The air was dry, but not harsh. It carried the scent of olive leaves, warmed by sleep, and the faint sweetness of figs, not yet ripened. Trees arched overhead in a quiet canopy, their limbs outstretched, not in grandeur, but in calm benediction. Light filtered through slowly, brushing the ground in patterns that did not move with haste, but lingered, like hands resting gently on skin. Heracles followed no trail but the earth's own rhythm. His steps left no mark that would last. He carried no satchel, no staff, only breath. Only the flicker, that small ember deep within, not forgotten, only waiting. It pulsed now and then, not with fire, but with a steady softness, like light through closed eyelids. As the path curved toward a low rise, stones began to appear. Along the edges, smooth, sun-warmed, and speckled with lichens, the color of old parchment. Upon one of them rested a feather, long and pale, untouched by breeze. Heracles paused, not to ponder, but to see. The feather lay still, as if it had never known flight, only settling. He left it undisturbed and walked on. The olive trees grew older here. Their trunks thickened into shapes like sleeping figures, their bark curled like ancient parchment. Some bore knots that resembled eyes, half-lidded and dreaming. He did not feel watched, only known as a drop of water is known by the stream it joins. Up ahead, a bend revealed a clearing where the path widened. The earth changed color here, deeper, richer, touched by charcoal and time. Ashes had fallen here once, not from flame, but from ceremony, scattered in reverence, not ruin. The scent still lingered faintly, not bitter, but soft, like the final breath of incense in a temple long at rest. In the center of the space stood a low stone basin, filled with water so still it seemed solid. A laurel branch floated atop, its leaves just beginning to silver at the edges. Heracles knelt beside it, not in worship, not in need, only to mirror. The stillness, he reached out a hand, but did not touch. The water reflected nothing, not his face, not the sky, not the branch, only calm, only presence. From the edge of the trees, an old woman approached, robes the color of dry wheat, sandals, quiet on the dust. Her hair was bound in soft coils, and her eyes, though clouded with age, glimmered like stone polished by endless rivers. She said nothing at first. Her gaze moved to the basin, then to him, and back again. "There is no question to ask," she said at last, her voice barely above the hush of the wind. Heracles did not answer. He did not need to. "You walk as one who remembers forgetting," she added, folding her hands. "And the road ahead will speak only in silence." He bowed his head slightly. The flicker within stirred again, warmer now. Not brighter, not burning, simply acknowledged. The woman turned and walked toward the trees. She left no footprints behind. Heracles rose and stepped once more onto the olive path. The basin remained still. The branch did not drift. Behind him, the clearing faded into the hush it had never left. The path narrowed now, threading through rocks and slender saplings. The air grew cooler, touched by the breath of higher places. A soundless invitation pulled him forward, not from without, but within. And as he walked, the ashes beneath his feet did not mark his journey, but carried it. The path rose gently, like a slow inhale. With each step, the olive trees thinned, giving way to open sky and scattered stones that glowed softly in the mid-morning light. Heracles moved as though through water, not slowed, but softened. The silence around him was not empty. It was textured, full of breath and presence, like a veil made of air. Ahead, the first column emerged, half buried in time and time. Carved from pale stone, it leaned ever so slightly, as if listening. Its surface was weathered smooth by wind and years, yet still bore the faint impression of a face serene, inward-looking, at peace. Not a portrait, but a gesture. The kind of image formed not to be seen, but to be remembered by the earth. Then came another, and another, a circle of columns rising from the earth like thoughts surfaced during sleep. Each held a face, and each face held a different stillness, a softness of brow, a suggestion of closed eyes, a mouth shaped by neither joy nor sorrow, but understanding. They faced inward, toward the center of the circle, where no altar stood, no throne, no pedestal, only stone and dust, warmed by light. Heracles entered the circle with the quiet of one invited. His feet brushed against time leaves and drifted petals, and the air here shifted slightly, as though sighing. He stood among the faces, his eyes moving slowly from one to the next. None looked at him, none looked away. They were present, not as watchers, but as witnesses. In this stillness, the flicker within his chest began to hum, low, steady, not calling attention, but anchoring him to the moment. He closed his eyes and breathed. The scent of the columns was faintly floral, dusted with lichen and age. Somewhere nearby, a bee traced its lazy path between lavender stems. From the far side of the circle, a figure appeared, not sudden, not approaching, but simply present, like a thought that had always been there. She wore robes, the color of worn parchment, hands folded loosely at her waist. Her hair shimmered with the gray of mountain mist, and her eyes held a gaze that moved through stone and sky without restlessness. She did not speak. Instead, she stepped into the center of the circle and turned slowly to face each column in turn, bowing her head slightly to every face. Heracles watched, not as a participant, but as one held in the pause between gestures. When she turned to him, she did not bow. She simply met his gaze and let the moment stretch, not to test, not to weigh, but to share. Then she extended a hand and motioned toward the open space among the columns. He stepped forward, standing where her gesture had invited him. The ground was warm. The breeze passed through the circle without disruption, curling around each face like a familiar song. "Here," she said at last, "you are seen, but not measured." Heracles did not move. The flicker in his chest glowed, steady now, no longer waiting. The columned faces did not shift, but something within their silence seemed to deepen, as if they had always known this moment would arrive. "You may sit," she said, and he did. They remained there, not speaking, not instructing. The wind moved through the circle. The bee returned to the lavender. The sky held its soft blue, unchanging. Heracles closed his eyes. The warmth of the earth seeped into his skin. He did not dream. He only rested, surrounded by those who bore witness not to his past, nor to his deeds, but simply to his being. And in that stillness, the flicker within him no longer waited to be kindled. It was already light enough. When Heracles opened his eyes, the columns remained unchanged and unchanging. Yet something subtle had shifted, not in the stone, but in the air itself. A breath had passed through the earth, warm and round, like the last exhale before sleep. He rose gently, brushing time from his fingers, and stepped once more onto the path that awaited without expectation. The land around him lifted into quiet slopes, pale and sun-warmed, shaped not by force, but by centuries of wind brushing gently across stone. There were no roads now, only impressions, soft folds in the land, traced by travelers who had never rushed. Cypress trees stood at a distance, their shadows long and slender like sleeping birds. Pebbles clicked beneath his feet with a sound like tiny bells forgotten in a stream. Delphi did not rise suddenly. It unfolded. The first sign was the scent, resin from laurel, worn into the stone walls by touch after touch, decade after decade. Then came the low walls, curved in ways that seemed both planned and organic, like shells that had grown to hold not sound but silence. The air grew cooler as he entered the sanctuary, not from height, but from presence. Even the sun seemed to dim slightly, not in reverence, but in softness. There were no gates, no grand halls, only terraces layered like breath, each one holding the hush of those who had passed through, leaving no mark but the echo of their stillness. Statues stood not in display, but in pause. Figures wrapped in stone cloaks, eyes closed or gazing downward, hands at rest. None pointed, none commanded. They were simply there, like old memories lining a corridor of thought. At the center, a courtyard lay open to the sky, its floor marked with faint circular patterns, not symbols, but rhythms. Heracles stepped into it, his sandals brushing across dust that shimmered faintly, as if woven with old ash and mourning. Light, in the middle, stood a low platform, uncarved, untouched, blank as waiting paper. Beside it sat a single stool, woven of reeds and time. He did not sit, he only stood, letting the air gather round him. The breath of Delphi was not wind, it was warmth. It moved across his skin like a shawl draped by invisible hands, slow, careful, without instruction. It asked nothing, it carried no message. It was a presence, not a command. Somewhere within the stone, a hollow sound echoed, not a voice, not even a tone, more a suggestion of vibration, like the resonance of a deep bowl touched gently by water. Heracles closed his eyes. His breath deepened. The flicker within him had ceased to flutter. It had settled, no longer a question, but a hearth. He did not listen for meaning. He listened for calm. And in that calm, he found it not an answer, but a resting place. A pause that stretched inward rather than forward. A space where movement came not from decision, but from alignment. He knelt beside the platform, his hand brushing its surface. It was warm, not from sun, but from presence. Not smooth, but familiar, like the inside of a palm long open. A single laurel leaf drifted down from somewhere above. It did not spiral. It simply lowered, gently, until it touched the stone. He watched it settle. Nothing more needed to be done. He remained there for some time. How long, he could not say. Time, in Delphi, moved like water over moss, unseen, unfelt, always gentle. Eventually, he rose, not with purpose, but with peace. As he stepped away from the courtyard, the breeze shifted once more, brushing past him like a farewell whispered by stone. He did not look back. There was nothing to leave behind, only the warmth he carried forward, not as flame, but as light already within him. And so Delphi faded not from view, but into him, like the memory of a hand once held, still, felt long after it is gone. Beyond Delphi, the path descended gently into a hollow wrapped in silence. Not the silence of absence, but of held breath, the kind that lingers between verses of a lullaby. The stones here were rounded and pale, polished not by tools, but by countless years of being touched by wind, water, and waiting. Even the trees grew differently. Their limbs curled inward, forming arches that leaned into one another like old friends sharing a secret. In the center of the hollow stood a ring of low braziers, each carved from a different stone, marble veined with rose, limestone with the scent of salt, basalt flecked with silver. Within them, small flames glowed, not tall, not hot, just enough to shimmer, like candlelight seen through tears. They did not crackle or flare. They burned with the patience of stars. Heracles entered the circle with slow steps. The flames did not shift as he passed. They remained as they were, steady and silent, offering no heat, only presence. In their light, shadows did not lengthen. They softened, folded into corners, rested. He sat at the center, cross-legged, palms open against the earth. Around him, the flames whispered, not in sound, but in sensation. The warmth of being seen without demand, the kindness of being held without question. From the outer edge of the circle, a figure emerged, neither young nor old, neither woman nor man, cloaked in a robe that shimmered like rain on stone. They carried a vessel of oil, small and shallow, carved from onyx. In measured silence, they moved to each brazier, refilling what had been only slightly diminished. With each act, the flame brightened not in size, but in clarity, as though reminded it was never alone. When they reached Heracles, they did not speak. They knelt beside him and held out the vessel. He dipped 2 fingers into the oil, then touched the earth before him. The oil sank in, leaving no mark, but something within him felt aligned, like a thread once slack, now drawn gently into stillness. The figure remained beside him, not as a guide, but as presence. Their silence was not empty, it was listening. Heracles closed his eyes. Within him, the flicker that had traveled so long, so softly, began to glow. Not larger, not louder, only whole. He breathed in, he breathed out. The circle did not move, but its rhythm pulsed with him. Each flame a breath, each breath a flame. Around him, the hush deepened, not to enclose, but to welcome, like a blanket drawn lightly over the soul. He did not seek visions. He did not wait for voices. He rested. He remained. And in that resting, something opened. Not a door, but a space. A space where nothing was required, and everything was allowed to be. He did not name what he felt. He did not trace its edges. He simply allowed it, like warmth on the skin, like moonlight on water, like forgiveness that asks for nothing. The figure beside him rose slowly and disappeared beyond the ring of light, leaving behind no footprints, only the echo of their calm. Heracles opened his eyes. The flames continued to glow. One by one, they shimmered and softened until only their warmth remained. The circle became shadow again, not dark, only quiet. And the glow within him remained, no longer flickering, no longer waiting, no longer seeking. It had become the circle itself, not separate, not alone, but complete in its stillness. Morning unfolded without fanfare. The stars did not vanish. They simply loosened their hold on the sky and drifted into memory. The horizon, once veiled in charcoal grey, began to blush with a color too soft to name, not gold, not rose, but something in between, like the sigh between sleeping and waking. Heracles stepped from the hollow where flames had burned like breath. The path ahead was lined with dew-damp grass, bending beneath his steps with quiet acceptance. No birds sang, no wind stirred. Even time seemed to pause, allowing the moment to stretch gently, as if not wanting to break its calm. He did not look back. There was nothing behind him to flee, nothing ahead to chase. He walked as one wrapped in stillness, the ground holding him with each step, the air touching him not to move, but to remember. At his side, a thin branch trailed behind laurel, newly fallen. It had caught in the fold of his garment during the night and remained, not as ornament, but as echo. Each leaf shimmered faintly with dew, and though they trembled, they did not fall. The road curled upward toward a place where the sky widened. There, on the crest of a gentle rise, stood a single tree, old, curved by time, but strong in its softness. Beneath it, a flat stone invited rest, not because it was made for sitting, but because it had been sat upon so often that stillness had become its nature. Heracles paused, one hand brushing the edge of the stone. He sat slowly, allowing his body to settle, not out of exhaustion, but out of arrival. He had not reached a destination. He had stepped fully into presence. The tree offered no fruit, no shade. It offered shape, a silhouette drawn in silence. Its roots wove into the hillside with the grace of a lullaby, while its branches held the sky without clutching. Beneath its limbs, Heracles exhaled. From the valley below, mist began to rise, not in clouds, but in threads, long, slender ribbons that curled gently around rocks and faded into the morning. Among them, a small bird passed, wings still, gliding low and slow. It made no sound. It did not need to. Heracles watched, but his mind did not follow. There were no questions now, only moments, only the quiet joy of being. Within his chest, the flicker had become something more. Not fire, not light, but a constant warmth. Not a reminder, but a return. The ember of forgiveness, of memory, of peace. It did not burn. It glowed like something once buried, now allowed to breathe. A distant bell rang, soft, low, carried by nothing but stillness. Not to summon, not to declare, only to note that dawn had truly arrived. And so he rose once more. No one watched, no voice spoke. Yet the world around him responded, in the shimmer of dew, in the hush of the hill, in the presence of that final pause before movement begins again. He stepped forward, not down the hill, not up another, simply forward into what would come. And with him the warmth remained, not a guide, not a burden, but a quiet thread that had always been part of the dawn. You are here now, no further to go, no path to follow, just this stillness, stretched wide and warm around you. The story has not ended, has softened, like mist settling into valleys, like a flicker that becomes glow, and then simply warmth. Close your eyes, if you haven't already. Let the images settle. The grove, the olive path, the circle of quiet flames, they are no longer far away. They live beneath your ribs now, gentle and steady. You carry them the way stone carries, sun long after night has fallen. Breathe slowly, not because you must, but because you can. Each breath is a return to your own hearth. Nothing presses, nothing waits. You have stepped out of time and into rest. Heracles walked a path not to be remembered, but to remember. Not to seek, but to listen. And so do you now. Let the hush of the grove fold around your shoulders. Let the soft light of the dawn behind your eyes linger just a little longer. You are not alone. You are not measured. You are simply here, and here is enough. Let sleep come not as a wave, not as an ending, but as a door that needs no key. Let the last threads of story weave gently through your breath. Let your thoughts soften like petals closing for the night. Everything waits for morning, but for now you rest. And in that rest, the ember within you glows, calm and complete.